This morning, I'm going to focus on the uniqueness of Jesus. Christ, who is He? We humans are a mixture of two things, generally. We have fears and we have hopes. That's what we are normally. Within us is a mixture of fears and hopes. Now, let me ask you to think for yourself, what are the fears that you have? What are the fears that you have? Think of yourself personally. Don't think of a friend, don't think of a neighbor, don't think of someone else, but think of yourself. What are the fears that you have? Oh, okay, good. That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I can see now. I'm sorry? I think you'll have to put the slide on. If you put the first slide on, then the rest may come through. Okay. It's not coming on the monitor. Yeah, this works. The monitor is still not syncing, but doesn't matter. Let's get troubled about PowerPoints. What we need to be focusing is on ourselves. I'll keep an eye occasionally on that. Don't bother. What are the things that we fear? Can you think of something that you fear? Has everyone thought of something that you fear? Sorry? Our future. Okay. Yeah. Exams. Okay, I won't ask all of you to answer, but you know for yourself what your fear is, right? Okay, have you been able to look through yourself and see your fears? Okay, so if we move through this slide, we can see some of the fears that we as humans have. Okay, probably after that, hold on. This next thing is, what are the hopes that you have? What do you hope for? Take a second and think about it. Everyone is able to think of something? Don't discuss with one another. You want to know your hopes. You can't share your hope with another. You can share about your hope. You can share about your fears, but you can't share your fear and hope in its fullness. So think for yourself, what is it that you really hope for? Okay, now we're going to look at a list of things that we fear. Okay, let's have the four, one more. Generally, humans tend to fear these four major categories. I'm sorry, exams don't come in that category. Okay, but maybe it comes in natural disasters. Okay, we have natural disasters that humans generally fear. For example, if you hear a storm or a cyclone, or there is going to be an earthquake, that is something that we as humans all fear. Then the second thing we fear is illness. We fear illness, that we will fall ill. In fact, just 3 years ago when COVID hit, we could see how there was so much of fear everywhere. Every human being, I think we have forgotten it, but every human being became our enemy, if you remember that period. You see another person and you think of the other person as an enemy who's out to infect you and to kill you. And I'm surprised that during that time, how many Christians, people who called themselves disciples of Jesus and followers of Jesus, were in complete fear during that period. The next thing that we fear is being controlled by an other, which is demon possession. And the fourth thing that humans fear is, the ultimate fear is death. Do you agree with me? The ultimate fear for us is death. When we are faced with the reality of death, whether not for ourselves, but even for anyone close to us, our family, our friends, those who are near and dear to us, there's a great fear of death. These are the four big categories of fears that humans have. And if we look at the hopes that we have, We hope for healthy relationships or sound relationships. Am I right? How many of you made friends when you all are here? I think all of you should have made some friends. If you haven't made a friend over here, who didn't make any friend here? You won't raise your hand up, is it? Okay. Okay, how many of you made friends over here? Put your hands up. Now look at those who did not make friends and go make friends with them today. During the lunch break. Again, keep your hands up. So those who have your hands up, look at those who did not put their hands up and become friends with them. I can see a section over here. I can see a section over there. I can see some over there. And I'm seeing some over here. I'm pointing out to you where to look around and go make a person who feels they have not made a friend over here, help them to make a new friend. We need healthy relationships. The second thing we all long for, okay, don't talk to your friends. We'll do that later. Okay, the second thing we need is good health. The opposite of illness, what we hope for is good health. The third thing we want is our needs to be met. Whatever be our need, our hope is, a need may be something very small or something very large, but we want to have our needs met. The fourth thing that we want to have is trustworthy leadership. When we have leadership, we need people who can be trusted with leadership. Today we live in a time where there is almost a complete collapse of good leadership, of leadership that can be trusted. And this is not only in the political spectrum. It is unfortunately seeping down even to the level of the individual home. You may ask, what is this home about? In our homes, God has ordained a structure where there is a leader in the house. And many homes are leaderless because the men of the house are not taking their responsibilities seriously. So from the unit level of the house, right up to the national and global level, we are finding a dearth of trustworthy leadership. We all long for good leadership. Am I right or wrong? That is why we go and vote at elections, isn't it? That is why every opportunity we get to comment on the need for leadership, we talk about it. Next is, we hope to have something, some awareness or some knowledge of the future. We all want to know something about the future. And last and as important or more important than anything else in the list is eternal life. So if you can see, on one side, we fear death, but on the other side, we long for eternal life. Today, billions of dollars are being invested to try to extend the life of humans. I don't know how many of you follow Elon Musk. Quite a few must be following Elon Musk. He's he's again become the richest person in the world yesterday. Who's the richest person in the world changes every alternate day. Anyway, I'm not figuring in that list, so I'm not worried about that list. But even they are investing a lot of money for what? For eternal life. Now we're going to look at Jesus and keep our fears and our hopes in the back of our mind. And we're going to look a little about Jesus. Who is he? Okay, the first thing we see about Jesus is that he healed multitudes of all kinds of sicknesses. I would recommend that you can take notes rather than turn to all the Bible verses because it will be very cumbersome. Matthew chapter 9 verse 35. It says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. So you can see that not only was he traveling through their villages, but he was teaching and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. Luke chapter 7, it's a slightly longer passage, 18 to 23. This is when John sends his disciples to Jesus. John's disciples told him about all these things. Calling two of them, he sent them to the Lord to ask, "Are you the one to come, or should we expect someone else?" Now, why is this question? For 400 years, that's a gap between the Old Testament and the beginning of the ministry of John the Baptist in the New Testament, for roughly 400 years, not exactly, there was complete silence. God did not send any prophet. There was no word or any utterance from God during that period of silence. And John the Baptist was the first one who came proclaiming the kingdom. And John the Baptist, after he began his ministry, soon after that, we find Jesus also began preaching and teaching in that region. Now, he's calling two of his disciples who John is sending, John the Baptist is sending two of his disciples to Jesus with the question, are you the expected one, or should we expect someone else? So these men come to Jesus, verse 21, and they said, John the Baptist sent us to you to ask, are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else? At that time, Jesus cured many who had diseases, sickness, and evil spirits, and gave sight to many who were blind. So he replied to the messengers, go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who are dead are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me. You can see that the messengers are sent back not with the words of Jesus, but they're asked to report back what they have actually seen. And what is it that they have seen? The blind receiving their sight, the deaf being able to hear, the lame being able to walk. Those who have leprosy are cleansed, and the dead are raised from the dead. So the first thing we see about Jesus is that he was healing. It was the testimony of Jesus' ministry that he was healing. The second is in Matthew chapter 14, verse 25. You can see that he walked on water. We won't read the passage. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. That's all that verse says. You know, Jesus was able to have mastery over nature. He was the master of nature. And we see many other instances of Jesus having mastery over nature where he calms a storm. And the next one we see is he casts out demons. Mark chapter 3, verse 11. Whenever the impure spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, you are the Son of God. You can see his control over nature again because he turns water into wine. That's a wedding at Cana, John chapter 2. And then in John chapter 6, we find that with 5 loaves and 2 fish, he feeds a multitude. The multitude included 5,000 men, but we don't know the total number of persons that were there. And in John chapter 11, the story of Lazarus, we see he raises Lazarus from the dead. I'm not repeating all these stories because we are all familiar with it. So we can see that he was all of this. There is more than that. Let's look at the next slide. He taught with authority. Mark chapter 1, verse 22. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. He taught them as one who had authority, not as teachers of the law. So you can see his teaching. Mark chapter 2, you can see that he forgives sins. There is the story of the man who was lame. The friends came to bring the man to Jesus, but the place was fully crowded. So what did they do? They made a hole in the roof and lowered the stretcher in front of him. And what does Jesus do? Before he heals him, the first thing he does is he says, son, your sins are forgiven. He forgives him his sins. And the Pharisees and all are disappointed and say, who is he to forgive sins? But to show that he has authority to forgive sins, he heals that man. He tells him, get up, pick up your mat and walk. So he forgave sins. Matthew chapter 14, verse 33. This is an important one. He received worship. It says, then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. And the last one, which is going to be very lengthy, so we have not put any of the Bible passages, but you can see many prophecies about Jesus were fulfilled in him. The prophecy that he would be born of a virgin, that was fulfilled in him. That he would be born in Bethlehem, it was fulfilled in him. Isaiah 53 said that he would suffer, he suffered. That he would be rejected and that he would die. In fact, if you look at the Gospel of Matthew and keep the Old Testament before you, Matthew seems to be pointing out to a large extent that Jesus is the fulfillment of what the Old Testament was looking forward to. Now, I know this is a lot of information, so let us try to summarize it. He rose from the dead, that's the last one. Let's look at what do humans fear and what are the responses that we can see in Jesus for these 4 items. You can run those 4 points quickly. Okay, the first thing we fear is human disasters, but we can see Jesus is one who is Lord over creation. He's Lord over creation. In Mark chapter 4, he calms the storm. For illnesses, we see that he's the one who heals. For demon possession, we know that he's the one who the demons feared and he cast out demons. And there are many instances in the Bible. And as far as death is concerned, he's the one who raised Lazarus from the dead. And in John chapter 20, we find that he fulfills his words when he rises from the dead. He says, I am the resurrection and the life in John's gospel. And then we find that he is fulfilled. Yes, something is coming on the screen. Thank you. Okay, so you see that Jesus is the one who meets our fears. So let me summarize what I know. We've gone through a lot of information in very little time. But I just want to summarize it very quickly. I'm hoping you've taken notes and you will go back and read through it and reflect on it. But let me put it together. What are we looking at? We are looking at our own fears. We are looking at our hopes. And how does Jesus deal with the fears that we may have? So what are the areas of fears that you have? You find that Jesus is the one who is able to provide help and to help us overcome those fears. So you can see whether it is disasters, whether it is illness, whether it is demon possession, or maybe the greatest fear of all, death, he shows that he is a Lord of it. In 1 Corinthians, in fact, about death, Paul says, death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory? You know, with Christ rising from the dead, even the ultimate enemy, the ultimate foe is death. And that death is defeated. You know, our ultimate foe is death. You know, when a person is alive, till the person has that last breath, there is always hope in us. And then when that person takes the last breath, if that's someone close to you, you know the sense of disappointment, the sense of loss. But Jesus has overcome death and been raised from the dead. Let's look at what do humans hope for. We hope for healthy relationships. Now, what is the basis of healthy relationships? I'll dwell on a few of these points a little longer. The basis of healthy relationships, whether it is between a husband and a wife, or whether it's between parents and children, or it is between us and our friends, the basis of our relationships is the willingness or the ability to handle hurt. There is no relationship where we are never hurt by the other, except our relationship with God. Our relationships on earth always have a tinge of some way in which we are hurt or we hurt the other. That's a reality we have to face. There is no husband and wife who can ever claim that they have never ever done something that has hurt the other person. No parent can tell the child, or no child can tell the parent that we have never hurt the other. But what we find is that for all of our hurts, the only remedy is forgiveness. The only remedy is forgiveness. And how can we forgive? Because we received forgiveness. You know, every time, I know by matter of rote, we say what is called the Lord's Prayer. I prefer calling it the disciples' prayer because that's what Jesus told his disciples to pray. He taught his disciples to pray. That's what Luke 11 says. What does a prayer say? Forgive us what? Our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Do you notice this is a conditional prayer? If I am not willing to forgive, I do not receive forgiveness. But because I have received the greatest forgiveness of all my sins in Christ, I am able to forgive and other. So for healthy relationships, we receive forgiveness from Christ because of his death on the cross, and we receive forgiveness from a pure, holy, spotless God who lives in everlasting perfection. From him we have received forgiveness, and therefore we are able to extend forgiveness to the other. For good health, our hope, we know that what is our answer is Christ is the one who heals. Even when we think of modern medicine, if we give it little thought, exists only because God has created us and different chemicals and compounds in nature in such a way that those chemicals and compounds, when they interact with our body system, they produce an effect and a result. If God had created things in such a way that those chemicals and compounds don't have an effect on us, consuming those tablets and drinking those syrups would not help. But it is because God has constituted the world in such a way that this is not to say that God only heals through tablets and medicines that we consume. But what I'm pointing out is even there, it is God who provides the healing because the means for that was there in his creation itself. So in his creation itself, he has provided so that when I take a paracetamol, it reacts with some things in my body and it provides relief for headache or lowers my temperature down if I have a fever. This is because God has made this so wonderfully. No wonder the psalmist could exclaim with delight, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You can't put a tablet into a computer that is not working. A tablet not meaning this kind of a tablet. I'm talking of a tablet that we eat. Or you cannot pour a cough syrup onto a phone that is not responding to touch. Because it's not designed for that. You're getting that? But you can see that God has designed us in such a way that there are things that will help us. Next is for our needs to be met. Again, coming back to the Lord's Prayer, what does it say? Give us this day our daily bread. I don't know if in Telangana I should say, give us today our daily pickle. Because this is one place where I enjoy pickles and I enjoy most of the pickles that come from the Andhra side. But God gives us our daily bread. And we can see that for those who are hungry, he fed the 5,000. And Jesus promises that he is the bread of life. Next is we see for good leadership. Okay, he's the one who washed the feet of his disciples, showing what true leadership is. By the way, there has been no model for perfect leadership like Jesus, and there never will be. Today, if you go into the management section of a bookshop and you look for books, and you will find there are books called servant leadership. And from where they got it? From John chapter 13, when Jesus washes the feet of his disciples. He provides us a model for leadership that is different from the way of the world, but that is the only effective way of leadership. As a good leader, he also taught. What about knowledge of the future? I'm talking about death repeatedly today because death is that point at which we know nothing on the other side except what has been revealed to us by Jesus himself. And of course, in the book of Revelation, we have some more glimpses into what happens on the other side. But we have one certainty about our final future. Our future is not when we become 60 and 80. That is part of our future. But if you were to look at our life as this long, I mean, this end not having an end, where we begin. Our life is just this fraction of 80 years. The rest is eternity, it just goes on indefinitely. And in that little place, he tells us and he promises in John 14, he says, I go to prepare a place for you. We don't know, but if he has gone to prepare a place for us, if the architect and builder is God himself, it cannot but be perfect. Do you agree with me? So even when it comes to the knowledge of the future, he has gone to prepare a place for us. And eternal life, he promises that anyone who believes in me will have eternal life. So let's just see who he is. Okay, yeah, you can run one after the other. I'll probably just... He's the one who takes away all our fears. He's the one who fulfills all our hopes. Can we put that as a summary? So you may not remember all the detail, but you can roughly remember that all the fears that you said you have this morning, Christ is the one who soothes us and calms us and applies a balm on us and comforts us, knowing us that those fears need not be real. On the other side, all our hopes are those that find final fulfillment in Jesus himself. Okay, so who is he? Okay, I'm going to put some words on the screen. The first is, he's the one who meets our needs. Okay, so you can see that he's one who meets our needs. Then he's also one who heals. He's also one who controls nature. He's also one who is an exorcist. He casts away demons. He's also one who raises the dead. He's also the one who is humble. And if you remember, this is one of the verses we began with. The first evening we talked about Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 and 29. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. Now, this is what we have covered thus far. We know that he meets every need. He's the one who heals. He controls nature. He casts out the evil ones. He raises the dead, and he's the one who is humble in heart. But there's something more to make sure that we get a complete picture of Jesus. Mark chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. I've put it in red over there. I hope you like the color red. Because he's also the one who is angry. What is he angry about? Mark chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. Jesus asked them, which is lawful on the Sabbath? There's a man with a withered hand, and the religious leaders are seeing whether he will heal this man with a withered hand. You understand what is a withered hand. His hand is fully shriveled, so he can't even lift it. It's probably just lying limp over there. And it is the Sabbath. And the Jewish leaders are now watching to see if Jesus will heal on the Sabbath. Because according to their rules, not according to God, but according to the rules that the Jewish leaders had made, you cannot heal on the Sabbath. And Jesus asked them, which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill? But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, stretch out your hand. He stretched it out, and his heart was completely restored. Jesus is also angry with the heartless behavior of the Jewish leaders. He asked them a question, should I do good or do evil on the Sabbath? And they remained silent. And then verse 5 says, he looked at them in anger. You don't want to do good. And sometimes we also as humans can become very rule-bound. The rules we make bind us. The rules become our masters. Humans make the rules, and the rules become our masters. And Jesus is now upset with the Jewish leaders because they are stuck over there. He stretches his hand out, and his hand is healed. Now, similarly, when the temple was being used as a place for buying and selling, all of you must be remembering that story you have heard of. When Jesus came into the temple, he saw that there were money changers who were exchanging currency. There were tables where there were those who were selling birds and doves. And Jesus comes and overturns the tables of the money changers and chases all of them out. Now, though the word angry is not used in all of the three passages, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but nevertheless, he's indignant about that. So let's look at Jesus. He's the one who meets our needs. He's the one who heals. He raises the dead. He controls nature. He chases out the demons. He's humble in heart. And he's also one who's angry at human heartlessness. Human wickedness or human evil. Are we okay with this? Are you getting a picture of who is Jesus? He meets our needs. He is one that we hope for, and all that we hope for is fulfilled in him. And he's also the one who deals with our fears. But is there more to Jesus than this? Is there more to Jesus than this? Because if you were to look at this part of it, there are many people who claim to do this for us. There are many who claim that they can heal from illnesses. They claim that they can cast out demons. They say that they will meet all our needs. They say that they are humble and they seem to be righteously angry. But is there more to Jesus? And this is what is most important. The first thing we see about Jesus is his unique birth. What is unique about his birth? He was born of a virgin. Now, there is no other human who can claim to have been born of a virgin. Luke chapter 1 verses 26 and 27. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. You can see that there is the angel Gabriel who is sent to the virgin who is only pledged to be married to Joseph. She is a virgin. She has not experienced any relationship with a male. So that is unique about him, that he is born of a virgin. Let's look at what else is unique about him. It's unique in his life. Hebrews chapter 4 verse 11. 4 verse 15, I'm sorry. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. So Jesus was fully human and of course fully divine. But in his full humanity, we see that he is our high priest, who is able to empathize with our weakness because he experienced temptation in every way. He experienced temptation in every way. Now, we are familiar with 3 temptations that are there recorded for us in Matthew's Gospel chapter 4 and Luke's Gospel chapter 4. There are 3 temptations. But in Luke's Gospel, it is not just that Jesus had to face 3 temptations. Whether he was asked to jump, Satan tells him to jump from the top. First was turning the stones into bread, then to jump from the pinnacle of the temple. And the third temptation was that you fall down and worship me and all these kingdoms of the earth will be yours. 3 temptations he faced. But in Luke's Gospel, it says the devil left him until an opportune time. So when Hebrews, the writer says, he was tempted in every way as we are, there's something of a great assurance to us. You know what is the assurance? There is no temptation you and I face that he has not experienced. There is no temptation you and I face that Jesus has not experienced. You are experiencing a temptation he already did. So 3 are recorded for us, but there are the others. Now, by the way, that also teaches us something important. Temptation is not sin in itself. Please pay attention to this. Temptation is not sin. Succumbing to temptation is sin. So if temptation comes your way, don't think that you have sinned. It is when you give in to the temptation, when you start yielding to that which is tempting you, that you become a person who has sinned. But in Jesus' case, we see he was tempted in every way. And then the writer of Hebrews ends that sentence by saying, just as we are, that means he's tempted just as we are. And then he says, yet he did not sin. So the uniqueness of Jesus is there is no one on earth who can say that he was born of a virgin. He had a virgin birth. The second uniqueness about Jesus is in his life that he did not have any sin. The third is in his death. Romans chapter 1, verse 4. Through the Spirit of holiness who appointed the Son of God in power by his resurrection from the dead, Jesus Christ our Lord. You know, his resurrection is again unique. Now, is his resurrection and Enoch the same or Elijah the same? What is the difference? Give it a thought. Elijah and Enoch were both taken alive. Very good. But in the case of Jesus, he experienced death, he was buried, and he was raised from the dead. And the Bible promises that he is a first fruit of many who will have resurrection from the dead. So let's go a little further and see what is the testimony of his disciples. His disciples were the one who were closest to him. No, and the people who are closest to us can tell us most about ourselves. For example, if you want to know more about me, whom do you think you should ask? Not the person who my auto rickshaw driver or a taxi driver who brought me from one place to another. He may have some idea about me, but very little. But whom would you ask? Yeah, okay. I like your answers. What about the rest of you? All of you are silent. Whom would you ask if you want to know more about me? Okay? My intimate friends, my family, and mostly my wife. Do you agree with me? Yes, it has to be someone close to you. Jesus spent his time, the last 3 years of his life, with his disciples. And the testimony of his disciples, John says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only one. No one has ever seen but God, the one and only. So the testimony of his disciples is they, in Jesus, had an encounter with God himself. John has put that in writing. John says that my encounter with this person was not just another human being. I met God incarnate. Can you think of it? It's an amazing encounter that he had. So if you look at his uniqueness further, you can see that his resurrection is the ultimate demonstration of divine power, and his offer of salvation is unique. Now I'm going to come to one part which I want you to pay close attention to because this is very important. Shall we move to the next slide? Okay, so here we see the testimony of his disciples continued. And this is the resurrection I was talking about. The resurrection of Jesus is the demonstration of his power. His offer of salvation is unique. Remember, let me pause for a minute. You know why his salvation is unique? What do you have to do to receive salvation? To receive the promise of eternal life, to be saved from your sin. What do you have to do? Just one word. Believe in Jesus. Believe. That's all you have to do. You know that you don't have to follow any set of rituals. You don't have to hurt yourself. No need for doing penance. All that we have to do is believe. And that is unique. And the final thing, we talked about it yesterday, he's the one who will come to judge the living and the dead. So let's look at Jesus as to who he is. Okay, Jesus clearly claimed to be God. I want you to pay attention to this thought. Jesus clearly claimed to be God. Let's look at the instances where he claimed to be God. Okay, first is in John 14, verse 6. We are familiar with this verse. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. Okay? I am the way, the truth, and the life. Now, is there a difference between a and the? Yes? If I said I am a way, I am a life, and I am a truth, it means that there are other ways, other lives, and other truths. But Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And then to make sure that we get it clearly, he says, no one comes to the Father except through me. He's making a claim for uniqueness, saying that salvation is found in no other name. This is the words of his disciples in Acts chapter 4, verse 12. His disciples say there is salvation found in no other name except the name of Jesus. So remember, he is saying he's the only one who can save. In John chapter 1, I'm not looking at Nathanael's passage, but you can see that he claims to Nathanael also that he is unique as God. So to his disciples in Matthew chapter 16, when he asked them, who do people say that I am? They declare that you are the Christ, and he says, yes, you are right in what you have affirmed. Okay, so at his trial, what did he die for? The claim that he was God. So let's look at Jesus. Who is he? Okay, we looked at him as one. We've already seen this slide before. As one who meets our need. He's a healer. He raises the dead, controls. He's exhausted, humble, and angry. Are you thinking I'm going too fast? You're okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay, but here let's look at some things more. That he says he's the only way. So you can see something new coming up. Then he also says that he is the truth. And then he says he's also the life. So you can see this is who Jesus says he is. He is the Lord who meets every need. Now, he's a Lord who meets every need. He heals, he raises the dead, he controls nature, he's angry, he's humble, and he's an exorcist. Okay, can you see all of this? Are you with me this far? Okay, so he's the one who meets all our needs. He's the one who fulfills all our hopes. He's the one who calms all our fears. Now let's look at this. Lewis, one of the greatest thinkers of our times, he said, I am trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about Jesus. I am ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is one thing we must not say. A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on a level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. Now, in a series of slides, I'm going to see why does Lewis say what he does say. You know, what did he say? He said, you can't just make a claim that Jesus is a great moral teacher. He says that kind of a claim doesn't make sense. Because if a moral teacher made the kind of statements that he made about himself, he says he's either mad or he is a liar. So let's move to the next slide. Let's look at this. Some of you are familiar with flowcharts. If you are not, it's okay. Jesus claimed to be God. Do you all agree? Yes? Does everyone agree Jesus claimed to be God? Yes. Yeah. Now, either the claim to be God is true or it is false, right? You know, even I can make a claim. I can claim that I'm the President of India, right? Of course I can. What prevents me? I'm claiming I'm the President of India. But then that's a question. Is it true or is it false? That's exactly the point. So Jesus claimed to be God. It can either be true or the claim can be false. Are you with me here? Yes. Now, if the claim is true, there are only two options available. Either I have to accept the claim that Jesus is God and bow my knees, go down on my face, and accept the lordship of Jesus in my life. Or I can know that he is Lord and yet reject him. I know the claim of Jesus that he is God is true, but I have rejected him. So can you see those two options? So Jesus claimed to be God. If his claim is true, that's what you see on the right side. You can either accept it or reject it. On the other side, it is possible that Jesus' claim to be God was false. No? So I claim to be the president of India, and the claim could be false. Some of you are very definite about it. Wait till I become the president. Okay, let's go to the slide. Next slide. Okay, if his claim was false, there are only two options possible. Now remember, Jesus is claiming to be God. There are only two possible conclusions. One is he did not know that his claim was false. So if you go to a mental asylum, what will you find in the mental asylum? There are people who are claiming to be presidents of countries, prime ministers of countries, great artists of the past, heroes of the present. In the lunatic asylum, you have people who are making claims which they know are false, they don't know are false, and they think it is true, but it is not true. So if I claim to be the president of India and I really believe that claim, I should fall in this category. I do not know that my claim is false. Are you with me here? And where do you then put me? You all don't want to do it, huh? You will have to put me in a lunatic asylum. That is, if I believe that I am the president of India and I really believe it, though I am really not, you will say he ought to be put in a madhouse. Am I right? So that would be one option. The second option on the other side is he made a claim to be God, but that claim to be God was a false claim, and he knew that that claim was false. You see the difference? This side is did not know. He did not know the claim is false. He really believed that the claim was true, though it was false. He believed the claim was true, though he wasn't God. But on the other side, he knew it was a false claim, and he kept continuously saying that he is God. That means he did something that is deliberate. He was a hypocrite, he was a fool, and he was a liar. Now I want to look at these two options a little more closely. The first option we want to look at is, was he a liar? Was Jesus a liar? That is, he claimed to be God. Now don't make a statement of blind faith. Listen carefully. Was he a person who claimed to be God? Are you with me? Yes. But his claim was false, and he knew the claim was false. That would make him a liar. Are you with me here? Okay, now let's see. Was he a liar? If Jesus knew that he was not God and yet claimed to be God, then he was a deliberate liar. What was he doing? He was deceiving his innocent followers. Can you see what he was doing? He was deceiving his innocent followers. Not only that, in John 14:6, what did we see a little while ago? He said he is the truth. Can you see that? So he was a deceiver. He was deceiving his followers because he knew that his claim to be God was a false claim. And yet he continued to deceive his disciples by saying that he was God. And he said that he was truth. Can we move to the next slide? So if Jesus knew that he was not God and yet claimed to be God, then John 18's promise, he promises his disciples that they would know the truth and the truth would set them free. But what was he? In this case, he was a liar. Because he made a claim he is God, but he knew the claim that he was God was not true. And he deceived his followers by telling them that he was the truth. And he also told them that they will know the truth and the truth will set them free. He was one who deliberately deceived. If he was a liar, he was also a hypocrite. Now, some of us may be blind religious belief by saying, oh, I want to believe that Jesus is God. But this explains to our mind that if he was a liar, The kind of things that he said about himself are astounding. Now, he would also have been a fool. Why? He finally died for the claim that he was God. Right? At his trial, both Ananias and Caiaphas asked him, "Are you God?" And he answered in the affirmative. It is a lie that cost him his life. He finally died for his claim that he was the Son of God. Are you with me here? Okay, let's look at the other alternative. That is, if he was a liar, Philip Schaff says something. He says, how in the name of logic, common sense, and experience could an impostor that is deceitful, selfish, depraved man have invented and consistently maintained from the beginning to end the purest and noblest of character known in history with the most perfect air of truth and reality? How could he have conceived and successfully carried out a plan of unparalleled beneficence, moral magnitude, and sublimity, and sacrificed his own life for it in the face of the strongest prejudices of his people and age? The second option, okay, is that he was a lunatic. Okay, let's see. Jesus claimed to be God. If the claim was false, let's look at the next slide. The first option we looked at is he was a liar. He knew that his claim was false, yet he continued to perpetuate it. And that is why we said that in the end he was a fool. Why was he a fool? He died for his claim that he was God, right? But let's look at the other option. What if he did not know that he was God? He was not God, but he truly believed that he was God. Was he a lunatic? John 7 verses 40 to 33, there were men sent to arrest Jesus. And they come back without arresting Jesus. And it's the strangest reason they give for not arresting Jesus. They ask him, why did you not carry out the arrest? Why did you not bring Jesus back? Now he gives the strangest of reasons. He says, no man ever spoke the way he did. You know, imagine if some people police are sent to arrest somebody and, they shoot back and they say we couldn't arrest because they were shooting. Or he ran away, so we couldn't arrest him. But this is the first time, or probably the only time in human history, where soldiers who went to arrest somebody came back and gave a reason like this. And what was the reason? No man spoke like him. Okay, was he a lunatic? That is a question. Now, in John chapter 7, when Jesus finished his teaching, you can see the crowds were amazed at his teaching. For he was teaching them as one having authority and not as their scribes. He was teaching them as one having authority and not as their scribes. So the question, was he a lunatic? Let's see the answer. Clark Pinnock says, was he deluded about his greatness, a paranoid, an unintentional deceiver, a schizophrenic? Again, the skill and depth of his teachings support the case only for his total mental soundness. If only we were as sane as he. So that leaves us only with the three options. Okay, Jesus claimed to be God. Either his claim was true, and if the claim is true, we are left with no other option but to decide whether to accept the claim of Jesus as Lord of our lives or to reject that claim. But if the claim is false, it meant that either he is a lunatic or he is a liar. George Duncan, he says, so you can see the options. George Duncan, he says, Christ either deceived mankind by conscious fraud, or he himself was deluded, or he was divine. There is no getting out of this trilemma. I'm going to quote C.S. Lewis again. It says, you can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come about with some patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that option open to us. I'm going to take the second last quote. H.G. Wells, he says, he was not a Christian, but look at what he says. I am a historian and I am not a believer. But I must confess as a historian that this penniless preacher from Nazareth is irrevocably the very center of history. Jesus Christ is easily the most dominant figure in all history. This is not a Christian who's saying it, remember that. It's a person who does not believe in Jesus, but who's a historian. So he's looking at the history of the world, and as he looks at the history of the world, he says that this penniless preacher from Nazareth is irrevocably the very, very center and the core of human history. He's the most dominant figure in all history. We end with this last thought. The statement that Jesus is Lord is certainly expressing personal devotion and commitment to a specific way of life. But only because those who sincerely make that statement also believe that Jesus is in fact Lord of the world. It's not just a blind belief that we have. Our minds assent to the fact that there is no possibility for Jesus being other than whom he claimed to be. If he was not a liar, if he was not a lunatic, then our answer automatically is that he is Lord. But the question now for each of us to answer, and we've asked this in different ways, in different times through these 3 days, have you confessed Jesus as Lord of your life? There's a little quote that I want to close with from Dr. James Allen Francis about Jesus. I'll close with this quote. It says, born in an obscure village, the child of a peasant woman, he grew up in another village. He worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. Then for 3 years, he was an itinerant preacher. He never owned a home. He never wrote a book. He never held an office. He never had a family. He never went to college. He never put his foot inside a big city. He never traveled 200 miles from the place where he was born. He never did any of the things that accompany greatness. He had no credentials but himself. While still a young man, the tide of popular opinion turned against him. His friends ran away. One of them denied him. He was turned over to his enemies. He went through the mockery of a trial. He was nailed on a cross between 2 thieves. When he was dying, his executioners gambled for the only piece of property he owned on earth, his coat. When he was dead, he was laid in a borrowed grave through the pity of a friend. 19 long centuries have come and gone, and today he is the centerpiece of the human race and the leader of the column of progress. I am far within my mark when I say that all the armies that ever marched, all the navies that were ever built, all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned, put together, have not affected the life of man upon this earth as powerfully as that one solitary life, Jesus of Nazareth. Nobody has affected life as Jesus of Nazareth. But this applause is not for anyone but for Jesus. He is who he claimed to be.